We're going to make a mink hat, and I'm making it out of the balance of the coat that I made into a vest. So I had some scraps left over, and I went through and matched out as best as I could from mostly from the sleeve portion. So we're going to make a 6-point hat. These are 5 that I've got cut here, and I've got them matched into sets. I've got them numbered so I know what the rotation is going to be going around. And this hat is going to look similar to this, but it's made a little differently. This was a store-bought pattern I got, but we're going to make it a little different. And so what I did was I modified the pattern. I used that pattern, but when you use a store-bought pattern, you remove any seam allowance, and I made it deeper, the triangle pieces, because I want this cuff to come, I want the hat to come down, and then I want the cuff to come over. So it'll be similar to this, where this is going to be the crown, which will be the mink, and that sable is going to be the cuff band. And I made a sample hat, so the cuff band, I sewed this on backwards, but you kind of get the idea how that's going to look, except for this is going to be turned, at the very bottom is going to be turned up into the inside, so that's not going to look like that. But I think it'll be a good style. I modified the band that goes around it to give it a little curve, so it's a little narrower at the top than the bottom, so it'll curve in and won't bow out. And then what I did was I transferred that pattern to a piece of, this is just a file folder I cut up, but we'll see how it goes. Then what I did was I took the sable collar, and this was originally joined the center backs together and came down to meet the lapel line. I took that apart and I joined it up at the center, and it's going to give a nicer match at the center. You can see that. And this is going to be the cuff band, and it's got a little bit of a curve. You can see that. So this will be the bottom of the cuff band, and this will be the top. So it's obviously it's wider going around, and we're going to get narrower at the top. So what I did on the crown pieces was I marked those, cold taped them, cut them out. But to give this a little bit more substantial type of support, I'm going to put a piece of press-on interfacing on this, I believe, and then I'll join it up. And then what I'm going to use inside, I'm going to do probably the same thing to the back of the sable. I'll see how that goes. I'm either going to use cold cloth or press-on interfacing. We'll see. And then I'm going to cut my lining. I'm also going to add a layer of this type of batting on the inside. It's real lofty. It was probably about that thick, and I just peeled off a layer until I got the consistency that I want. I just want a little cushion there, and this will help keep the hat springy on the top so that crown won't crush down. And we'll see how that goes. The next step, like I said, is I'm going to put the backing on these pieces, and then I'm going to join them up. And then we'll see about this sable, what I'm going to decide for a backing on that. I decided to try a piece of this fusible Pellon, and I think it works good. So this is what I'm using. I just bought it at a big box store, and I'm sure you can order it online. And I pretty much followed the instructions. So I've got my iron on dry, and it's set just past like wool. And So, you know, it's warm, but it's not terribly hot. And I took a scrap, because you don't want to do this on something that's not, that you're going to use. And so I already attached this piece, so you can see how that's done. And I didn't do the whole thing, but there you go. And it's giving it just a nice amount of body. So how I did that was I just took a piece of this bonding material and I cut one right here as an extra. And of course the shiny side with that bonding glue, you can see that goes down. Don't make the mistake of putting it the other way, or you're gonna have your iron with interfacing on it. So I give it like a 2-3 count, and 1, 2, 3. Then what I do is I take my press mitt and I put my press mitt on top of that to hold the heat in. And after I've got that done, then I check it. You can always come back and give it a little bit more heat, but where I had it at the heel of the iron and I was pressing a little bit harder, it attached perfectly. So I'm happy with that. And I'm going to do the rest of my peaks. And I'm not sure what I'm going to use on the Sable yet. I have to try it on the Sable. But I like it so far on this. And it's still soft, but it's got just that little bit of body. I remembered to mark on the back of each one of these the panel number when I was done pressing them on. So I kept them in the order that I wanted to because I matched it up pretty well. The way that I sew this when I'm sewing is I start at the bottom because the hair on this runs down. So I start at the bottom and I sew up to the peak. And I'm using a 90 weight cotton thread, and it's where you just tuck your hair in real well, and it sews real smooth. I remembered to mark the number on the back of my panel because I had these all marked before, and I wanted to keep them in the same order. When you sew, the hair is running down, so what you want to do is sew from the bottom going up. And I'm using a 90 weight thread, so tuck my hair in real well, and you just join it up to the top. The crown is joined up. I put it on a hat block. I have a wooden hat block that I use for pressing. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to press those seams. I just take the same medium iron, just a little bit by wool or whatever, and dry. And I am just going to push those seams down, press them down. And what it's going to do is it's going to train the hat to lay correctly. So I do that around the whole thing, and then I'll turn it inside out and show you what it looks like. So this is the crown of the hat, first side out, after I've got it pressed. And it looks, you know, pretty good. So what we're going to do next is we're going to make the under brim of the cuff of, I'm going to cut that out of leather, and I'm going to use that as a backing for the Sable as far as on the reverse side. So I'm going to cut that, and then I'm going to put a little stiffener on the back of that. I'm going to use cold cloth, and we'll get that started. I put my cold cloth on the leather. So what I used was a real nice lamb leather. This is a coat that I salvage a lot of coats, and I got this, and I decided to use this for the undercollar because it's very thin. It won't add a lot of weight, and with this backing, it'll give it enough stability for what I want. The cold cloth comes in a long roll. It's probably about 30 inches long, and you buy it by the yard. It has a adhesive backing to the cloth, so you cut what you need, and then what I like to do is start at one end, hold my goods flat, and then peel it back as I go. I don't like to take the backing totally off, because what ends up happening if I do that, I always end up with burps or bubbles or it not staying down nice. It can be repositioned, but even doing this one-handed, you can see it works pretty well. And it gives a nice stability to your leather. So I marked my pattern on this for the band, and I'm going to cut that out and join the back of it up, and then I'm going to do the same thing with my sable. I'm not going to use a backing on the sable. I'm just going to use it fur and attach it to this band. Here I have the cuff cut out of the sable, and that's the leather. So when I join these up together, it'll join like this at the top edge right here, and then this bottom edge is going to sew to the crown of the hat, and this bottom edge is going to get turned up towards the lining. I have the hat cuff attached to the other hat cuff, the inside hat cuff, the leather, and then that's the crown of the hat. So once this gets turned, and I'm going to finger press this edge. I'm not going to press it by iron. I'm just going to finger press this edge, and I might remove this piece of cold tape. So it'll roll nice. On this edge, we put the grosgrain ribbon, because this is going to get turned up towards the inside of the hat, towards the lining. And I'll show you what it looks like once I get it turned. So this is what it looks like turned. I think it's pretty. And the crown doesn't show a lot. This cuff can turn totally deeper if she wants it to go, down further on her head. As far as wearing it, it's not going to be deeper, but I mean, she can push this down and change the look a little bit if she wants to make it more of a slouch in the back, or go roll this down so it's narrower. And it's pretty. A hat like this done in sable, if this was new, would probably be close to $3,000. So yes, it's a little, coloration, it's oxidized a little bit, but still it's a pretty piece of fur. So what's next is we put a piece of grosgrain ribbon on this edge of the hat, and then we're going to attach the lining. I tried this on. It feels so nice. I don't even think I'm going to use this fluffy stuff that I was talking about before. So I don't think I'm going to need that. And I'm just going to cut the lining, and we'll get on to that. There's one more step I want to show you what I do before I put the grosgrain ribbon on. I did remove this cold tape where it was attached to the fur side on the cuff. And what I'm doing is I finger press this seam so it's not a hard ridge. I can feel that underneath. I'm holding it real tight where those two are together, and I'm just taking a long running stitch around probably about, a half an inch from the edge there. You can see, well, maybe it's a little deeper than a half an inch. But I'm just catching a little bit of this cold tape cloth, and I'm just going, taking a real tiny stitch into the fur. And I'm not trying to pierce it, but I want a little bit. Sable is so thin that you got to be careful. But I can feel where I'm stitching through here. And I'm going to do a row next to probably about this deep. All right, going around at the top edge. And then I'm going to come down and do another row about in the middle where I've got this chalk edge going. And so I'll just roll this down further and do another row around that area right there, all the way around, before I put my grosgrain ribbon on the edge. I use grosgrain ribbon for the edge on my hat. So what I like to do is this trick. I take the grosgrain ribbon, it's just a 1 inch wide. It's a polyester type ribbon. They used to make cotton back in the old days, but I don't know, I can't seem to find that. And they used to make it a little bit wider, but we don't need that width. I like to take and press this in like as much of an arch as I can. So I start at one end with a hot iron, and I just hold it with my iron, and I pull in kind of like in a half circle and press it as I go around. And what I get is a nice arch. And that's going to make a nice smooth finish on the inside of my hat. The longer edge is going to be attached to the edge of my fur right here. And the shorter edge is going to go up towards the lining. So it's got just enough of a contour that it will finish really nice. The hat lining for this was, the crown was just a circle. And then they did the hat main body in like a band style, and they took like just a little 1/4 inch dart or tuck going around the circumference every little bit. So that's what I did. And what I did after I sewed the crown to, or the top of the lining crown to that band that goes around, then I went and I took and I pushed the selvages up towards the center of the hat and top stitched that all the way around so that'll lay nice and flat. Pressed it, and now we're going to put it over the hat and pin it down. So I think it makes more sense than doing like peaks and have everything meet at the, center here. We'll see how it fits. For the hat lining, I did use a nice piece of Silk and Bemberg lining, and I did also use a piece of, it's a lightweight polyester fabric for the inner lining. So it is a double fabric in the hat lining of this hat. I put the hat lining in and started at the crown and worked my way around, and it went in pretty smooth. I stitched it into, this is the fur now up here. I stitched it and caught that interfacing. I started at the center front and went around to the back, and likewise on that side, and just tacked it down. After I had it tacked just above this joining edge, I trimmed it all the way around, kind of equal with that joining edge. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of, this is an Angora fleece, and it's lightweight, and I'm just going to take a piece of this. It comes on a bolt. It's probably about, 30 inches wide, and it's folded. So I'm just going to take a piece of this and lay this on this turn area here of my hat. What that's going to do, I might cut it just a little bit narrower. What that's going to do is that when I pull this back up over my lining, it's going to keep this edge here where this is going to turn. When I get that folded up, it's going to keep that from feeling crisp and it's going to offer a little bit of cushioning to the fur so the fur won't wear. And people wear their hats out when they wear them a lot, so we kind of want to protect that. So I'm just going to cut this maybe about a 1/2 inch narrower. And then what we're going to do next is I'm going to put that in, and then our hat band comes up over and we sew that to our lining. So that's what I'm going to be doing next. When I stitch the grosgrain ribbon up onto the lining, I kind of use like a back stitch. So I take a stitch that's maybe a little less than a 1/2 inch, and then I come back to where I started and take another stitch. So the stitch comes forward, I pull my thread out, then I come back right where I put my stitch out, where my needle came out, and I run another stitch. So it's kind of a lock stitch maybe. I don't know exactly what they call it. But I'll do this all the way around, and I start at the center and work my way to the back. And then the same thing, I start at the center and work my way back on the other side of the hat. After I have the grosgrain ribbon on, I like to come back and I use my press mitt underneath the hat, and I put it in, and I run my iron up around that edge and press that so it's nice and flat. And now we're going to put it on the hat form and see how it looks, and I'll give it a good brush. The other thing I want to say is that in between times that I've been doing this, I try the hat on to make sure that it's supposed to fit the way it's supposed to fit, because if it's too small or too big, I can adjust it and I don't have to wait till the end. So we'll see how it looks. I think the hat really turned out nice. It's got a real deep cuff, which can be rolled down a little bit if she wants to take and make this hat a little bit deeper on her head. You know, the thing is that it's only about 3 inches, but the hair length makes it just pop and makes it look so much more lush. And the back of the crown, the top, it's pretty. So coming towards you or walking away from you, this hat is going to be a nice wear. And I think that, what else are you going to do with a collar off of an old coat? You can turn it into a beautiful hat. If you like what you were shown today, please like and subscribe my channel. And this is the first time I've made this style hat, so I think we kind of learned something together.